Hey, New Beginnings fam. I hope you're having a restful and fun morning with your family. Man, I miss seeing you guys in person, but I'm so glad that we are keeping everybody safe and warm at home. And we will definitely get to see everyone next week. Next week, by the way, we're diving back in to our Cornerstone Values series. And so as we go through this, the goal is to really communicate about who we are as a church, what our culture is, what we are passionate about, and what we're going after. And so this is really the first time we've taught through these values specifically the way that we are. So I'm really excited for next week's. But today, what I wanted to do is talk about not one of our cornerstone beliefs necessarily, but a value that we live by as a body because it plays out of our cornerstone beliefs. And so that is coming from a place of rest. You guys, if you've known us for any amount of time, you'll have heard Catherine and I talk about coming from a place of rest. And to us, that doesn't just mean getting a good night's sleep. It doesn't just mean being calm, but coming from a place of rest actually means that we are walking in a confidence that doesn't allow anxiety to rule the direction that we go. Even more than that, it's so much of church culture has been built around striving. It's been built around, man, trying really hard not to sin and trying really hard to go after God and trying really hard to read enough of my Bible. And so much of it has been built on what I would call human zeal and human strength. And when we talk about coming from a place of rest, we're actually talking about a scriptural understanding of what it means to really trust in God. Because if I really trust in God, then when I walk into the room, I'm going to come with a different purpose. I'm going to come with a different expectation of what's going to happen. So, for example, this was probably, gosh, 10 or 15 years ago. I was working in a job, and I remember pretty vividly my boss coming to me and going, "Hey, will you come in on this day? I need to have a meeting with you." He didn't tell me what it was about, so I'm walking into this meeting on the day of, and the whole time in between that call and that meeting, I had anxiety. I was stressed. I was like, "Am I getting fired? Am I in trouble?" I didn't have something specific in mind, but my boss was not a very communicative or relational person. So when you get called in, I'm like, is somebody else going to be there? Is it just me? I had no idea who was going to be in the room or what the meeting was about. And because of that, it threw me completely off kilter and I had no peace. And so in that situation, my goal was to think about what could the potential conversations be about and how would I respond if he says this and how would I respond if this is what he has a problem with that happened this last week and I'm just going through all of the scenarios and there was zero amount of rest, zero amount of peace. And when I finally got to the meeting, it was fine. It actually wasn't about anything big at all. Uh, but how many times do we do that? How many times do we have something that hits us in life that comes up in our relationships or in our jobs or in different areas, and we have this instant arousal of anxiety and fear that pops up inside of us, and it causes us to begin instantly to try to perform. And that anxiety pushes us instantly into a place of, well, if I don't show up right, I don't know what to expect. In fact, because I don't know what to expect, I'm going to work really hard to show up right so that I don't throw anything off. And I think that when we do that, what we're saying is my success in this situation is dependent on my ability to convince other people that that I'm okay, that I'm good, that I have what it takes. And anytime we do that, we're putting our faith, our trust into ourselves. And so there's a really interesting situation about this in scripture because in Acts 27, Paul goes through some amazing stuff. He goes through some crazy stories. But in Acts 27, he's a prisoner and he's being taken by ship from one place to another. And as they're on the ship, they stop in one port. And Paul says to them in verse 10 of Acts 27, he says, "Men, I perceive this voyage will end with disaster and much loss, not only of the cargo and ship, but also our lives." Nevertheless, the centurion was more persuaded by the helmsman and the owner of the ship than by the things spoken by Paul. So Paul's in this scenario where he's like, "Hey, I have a sense from God that this is not going to go well. We need to stay here." And in that situation, you would think he's doing exactly what he's called to do, right? He's gotten a word from the Lord, he shared the word, and the people around him go, nope, we're going to do it our way. And as a prisoner, he has to go with them. And so what's crazy about this is Paul is forced to go on this trip that he knows is going to end in disaster. And I want you to pay attention to what he does and how he responds throughout this trip. Things go bad. They end up being tossed to and fro and stuck in this sea for 2 weeks. And finally, in Acts 21, it says this. I love this. It says, "But after long abstinence from food, then Paul stood in the midst of them and said, 'Men, you should have listened to me.'" And I love that you can see that Paul's a little perturbed. Like even as a believer, you can be in a situation and still get hangry. And Paul right there, he's like, "We were tossed around on the sea. You did what I said we're not supposed to do. I'm hungry. You should have listened to me." And then he says, "He should have listened to me and not have sailed from Crete and incurred this disaster and loss. But catch this. He says, for there, and now I urge you to take heart." He doesn't keep berating them. He doesn't keep beating them down. He actually says, "I urge you to take heart, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. For there stood by me this night an angel of God to whom I belong and whom I serve, saying, 'Do not be afraid, Paul. You must be brought before Caesar. And indeed, God has granted you all those who sail with you. Therefore take heart, men, for I believe God that it will be just as it was told to me.'" So you've got so much more to this situation, but he's on this boat. They haven't even eaten yet. They have some food reserves yet left. They're trying to keep them because they don't know how long they're going to be stuck here. And so Paul's saying, "Hey, it's going to be okay. God's told me you're going to be safe." Can you imagine? I want you to picture, imagine the stakes of this, okay? He's on this boat with his captors and all of these sailors, and he had a dream from the Lord, or he saw an angel, and it says that he was told that these men are going to be okay. But their lives are on the line. They don't have salvation in front of them yet. And the guts that Paul has to say, "I take God at his word. I believe that what he said will come to pass. You're all going to be fine." That's high stakes because if Paul's wrong, he ate it's a hunger dream, like whatever it is, like he's setting himself up for major trouble in front of these guys. And there's something about when we're in scenarios of anxiety and risk and struggle and turmoil, none of us has been in a situation this high risk. And yet, I believe that we've been in situations that have felt high risk to us, where the Lord has said, "Hey, this is what I want to do here." Sometimes it's word for word that we hear him. Sometimes it's just a sense, just a little sense of, "Hey, this is where peace is." And I think sometimes when we speak peace and we've taken the risk of saying, "Hey, this is what needs to happen," and the people around us don't listen to us, we feel like we failed, like we didn't hear God, and we begin to withdraw from his voice. When the reality is, many times in those situations, you've spoken exactly what you were supposed to say. You were obedient, you did follow the Lord, and people didn't agree and go along with it. And so they didn't get to see the results. But in this situation, Paul has so much trust in God that he actually says to them after this, he's like, "Hey guys, you haven't eaten. Just eat. Just eat some food. We're going to be okay. You need to get some strength in your bodies. It'll help your emotions. We're going to go and we're going to find the island that we need to land on." And so he encourages them. He brings life. He brings support. Yeah, he gets a little hangry at the beginning, but he follows it up with this sense of rest, this sense of peace. And it's not a sense of like, "Oh, we got to find this." It's just calm and rest. When we say coming from a place of rest, what we mean is that our souls are rested and renewed in God. That as we go to sleep, no matter the situation, Paul knew that they were heading for tragedy. And yet it says that he's able to rest, he's able to sleep, he's in the night, he's visited by an angel because his spirit is calm, he's not distracted, he's not focused on everything else. He's still at rest, even though he knows tragedy is coming. And so I think the question is, what does it take for us to get to that point? What does it take for us to get to the point where we can say, "My heart is at rest. When situations arise, I don't come at it as responding to the situation. I come at the situations responding from the security that I have, the faith that I have, the trust that I have in what God has spoken over me. And when we can do that, when we can come from a place of rest, it doesn't matter what the circumstances are, we won't be a victim to them. We actually get to invade life. There's this great saying that one of my mentors has said. I don't know where it comes from originally, but I think it's phenomenal. And that saying is this: life doesn't happen to you, you happen to life. We're not the victim of whatever just gets thrown our direction. As sons and daughters of the King, life doesn't happen to me. I happen to life. And when we can learn that, when we can recognize that, everything shifts. And it's not I happen to life on my own, right? It's I happen to life with the power of the kingdom, with the presence of my God in me and through me. We shape the world around us. We actually get to make the world around us look more like heaven. And what we're talking about here, it's not a work of strength and commitment and will. It's first and foremost a work of trust. We shape the world around us as we trust both in who God is in us and who we are in Him, what we carry, what you carry. Listen, you don't have to see it in your hands to know the reality that what you carry in Jesus is absolutely astoundingly world changing. So when I walk in faith regarding my life and my circumstances, my words are different. My actions are different. The spiritual atmosphere shifts around me. The way that I approach things, instead of receiving and reacting, I get to inject the life of the kingdom, the life of heaven. I carry expectation, not anxiety. So when we come from rest, our primary goal is not to do something, but first to recognize what the Lord is already doing and then just join Him in it. And it's that simple. So, guys, this morning, as you enjoy the cold weather, the snow, maybe some of you guys will go sledding or do something fun. I know the temperatures are cool, but I just want to encourage you to allow the rest of the Lord to enter into your soul. Allow yourselves to just take the time to receive from Him. Put on some worship, get into the Word, dive into the peace that He has for you, and any areas inside of you that are still walking in anxiety. There may be things you need to go, hey, Lord, I want to actually lay this down and give this to you and take up your rest. You know, there was a prophetic word given years and years ago, but a prophetic word given that the 2020s would be the decade of the rest of God. And so that's the rest I believe He's inviting us into. So enjoy this day. I just declare and pray that your minds would be at peace, your souls would be at peace, that you would be able to receive the words of Jesus, the true intimate connection with Him, to hear His heart for you, to know exactly what He would say about you, what He would say about the situations that you're in, and what He would give to you to be able to bring life into those situations. So I just release that over all of you watching this morning. And I love you guys so much. Can't wait to see you next week and have a wonderful day.